Hello, everyone. It's breakfast at Tiffany's time, and you'll notice that it's a different voice today. It's uh, it's me, Al, the campaign manager, and I'm here with a different special guest today, Council candidate Carter Kraft. Carter, how are you doing today?
Hey, good afternoon, Al. It's great to be here. The storm has passed, so always the day after, it's a beautiful day in Hoboken. Thanks
Oh
for
my gosh, and
organizing
you mean
this.
that in more ways than one. We're recording after that weekend of terrible rain, and it swamped our our efforts to go around, walk around Hoboken. We had this whole big plan for Columbus Day. We weren't able to do it. But we were able to turn it into a good opportunity, I think, to talk to a lot of voters. We put together this huge phone bank in our new campaign headquarters, which is our first campaign update. Carter, you had a lot to do with getting this new campaign headquarters. Can you tell us about it?
It's a beautiful spot, Al. It's the parsonage at 606 Garden, one of the oldest residential buildings in Hoboken. And since the community church next door is in between pastors, there was an opportunity to enliven this space for the next 4 weeks. So thanks for being a part of it, and thanks for helping get us all set up here. It's like having
Yeah, no,
four offices under one roof, plus a little bit of a kitchen. So it's a very homey environment for some team building activities, bringing the volunteers in, getting them back out, getting everybody excited about the change that we can bring to Hoboken in the next year. Thanks.
it really is. Yeah, and people are coming all by all the time with free food. I feel completely stocked up on bagels and pizza, which which is the standard MO for campaigns.
Carbs may not get us all the way there, but they'll get us almost there.
That's true. So, Carter, yeah, we usually do a campaign update. Lots of stuff been happening. Can you give us a brief update what's going on?
Well, we're in forum and debate season. So a lot of the civic groups around town are bringing people together, putting the candidates on a stage, and we all get a chance to hear what the candidates have to say. There was a forum last night at OLG of the mayoral candidates. That was super interesting. There's another forum coming up next Tuesday for the city council at-large candidates. So I look forward to that upcoming event.
What's that been like for you, hitting these debates?
You know, it's always educational. You come to these events and you realize, like, well, I came in here thinking I know a lot about this town, but you always pick up a lot from what's said on stage, and you always leave with a little bit of a different perspective. You know, I'll be honest. There's six candidates for mayor. They all offer some kind of experience, but every time I come out of a forum, I'm very proud of our team. I'm very proud of the candidate that we've got, and I think she and we are the best positioned to deliver the change that Hoboken needs.
100%. It's always great when I get to see you in one of these debates. You perform really, really well. And so I'm looking forward to the next one because I
Thanks.
get to hear you speak again.
Thank you.
Um, on
Me too.
on that note, there's been other things happening. We've had house parties. People have been opening up their house to everybody, right?
Some house
Uh,
parties, some meet and greets. You know, we've had meet and greets and happy hours here at different restaurants or bars around town. This Saturday, actually, we've got a meet me at Hoboken Hot Bagels up at 634 Washington Street. So I hope people will come by between 8:30 and 9:30. One of my favorite longtime Hoboken businesses. Couldn't be nicer as people and dealing with the realities of the affordability crisis, of the inflation crisis. So we're happy to support small businesses in every way we can.
right. And people are encouraged to bring their dogs, right?
Love dogs. They're social animals for the most part, like the rest of us for the most
Yeah,
part. So yeah, it definitely adds a little bit of a fun factor.
that's awesome. And so even if you don't have a dog, you want to come pet some dogs, there will be dogs there.
Absolutely. Come
But
be
also
social
an
with all
important
of us
opportunity.
and come with your questions. You know, last week, one of the most meaningful conversations we had was an exchange with a Hoboken resident, a family that lives on Washington Street. You know, they're right over one of those groups of e-bike delivery drivers. They see it every day. They see the aftermath every night. But rather than complain, these are everyday citizens and residents who actually engage with the delivery drivers and try to figure out what's going on, try to convey the message that, you know, we appreciate their services. And to a certain degree, we rely on their services and we want their services, but we need better behavior on the streets. We need groups that clean up and individuals that clean up after themselves. And we need to have an ongoing dialogue because these are service providers to our city. We can't just be shaking our finger and feeding them new rules and shooing them away from this place only to then have them congregate at that place. Just like any complicated urban issue, we need dialogue between all of us and solve the problems together.
See, and that's, I think, one of the important differences in the approach of Team Tiffany is that sort of collaborative effort, bringing everything back and putting residents at the center of decision making. That's what Tiffany keeps talking about.
Well, and it's prompt decision making. I had this exchange with a resident. I said, "Well, wasn't there a task force?" Because I'm a first time candidate. I pay attention to what's going on in town, but I haven't been neck deep the way Tiffany has. It wasn't there a task force? And his attitude was like, "Don't bother me with more task forces." It was assembled. They had a meeting. They said they had a meeting, and then it was kind of disbanded, passively, just because they didn't have any more meetings and didn't come out with any recommendations, any action plan. Like a lot of government does, pass one law or a set of laws, the test and vest, which is a great step, don't get me wrong. But when that's not paired with enforcement, it's like, what do we got? We got the test and vest program, but now we need the enforcement to go with it. And even when you have all these rules, we need to go back to the norms and behaviors of let's clean up after ourselves. Let's not be loud and crazy all night. Let's not leave the junk from our bike repairs on the sidewalk for somebody else to clean up. But let's be honest, a lot of the people who are providing these services, a lot of e-bike delivery drivers, they didn't grow up around here. They didn't grow up in the US. And where they grew up, the patterns of behavior were different. So we just need to share better habits and bring them into our community because we rely on them. I mean, I know my kids do. Gosh, like all the time. It's like, really?
Yeah,
Anyway, so I see him as providing a service. A great outcome of that exchange in front of Hoboken Hot Bagels was the resident got to meet Tiffany. He and we met together the next day. He brought a representative of one of the groups of delivery drivers, and we had a meaningful exchange within 24 hours on what's going on. I didn't realize it, but a lot of these delivery drivers, they actually speak French. I thought maybe they were from Ghana or maybe they were from Central or South America. So fortunately, we were able to actually translate that conversation into a meaningful exchange. And now the conversations are ongoing. It's not about waiting till November. It's not about waiting till January. What I appreciate about Tiffany is like, if we can fix it now, let's start to fix it now. The work doesn't have to wait. It doesn't have to wait for the press release. It doesn't have to wait for the next campaign event. Let's start the dialogue. Let's bring people together and let's solve the problem together.
100%. And that results oriented focus is what we need. I want to
I'm
shift
with
gears
you.
for a second. So
Yeah.
that's our community updates. We update people
Yeah.
about what's happening with the
It
campaign.
was a fun weekend.
But
We'll be back at Hoboken Hot Bagels on Saturday, 8:30 to 9:30.
everybody come out. It's a good
Your
time.
choice of spreads
Nice.
and
Um,
coffee.
but I want to get into a little bit about you. You took the time to come spend with us today, and I really appreciate it. I know our listeners do. But
Flattered.
tell us a little bit about yourself, because you, like you mentioned, your first time candidate, so not on the public stage before. Like people are curious to learn about Carter Craft.
Again, flattered to be here and flattered to be on the ticket. I've been a quiet member of the Hoboken community. Well, depends on which community you're talking about. Relatively quiet for the past 21 years, raising our kids here, one in college, two still in school. But I've been an advocate for the 30 years that I've lived in the Northeast of the US. Years ago, when I was living in Chelsea and New York City, I was a volunteer with the group Transportation Alternatives, where my volunteer job became the traffic calming committee chair for Union Square. And it took more than a decade, but we've actually got Union Square to become one of the most pedestrian friendly districts in New York City. After that, I helped started a nonprofit called the Waterfront Alliance, where I was a voice and advocate for all these types of waterfront issues, from collapsing infrastructure to coastal protection to expanding recreation. So, kind of trying to bring the voice of the people to the people in power, because often as people get elected, they lose touch with what all the rest of us, struggle through and deal with in our daily life. So I've been out of it for a little bit, trying to be a dad. I've got two jobs, but I realized with Tiffany running for mayor, and she's been such a great supporter of everything I've needed with some of my community causes, Rebuild by Design for more than 5 years, the Hoboken Cove Community Boathouse for many years. I realized immediately that she's a wonderful candidate, puts residents first, and has a business experience to help us get back on the right financial track.
100%. And by the way, if our listeners are hearing some background noise, it's an active campaign office. We have things going on, so we couldn't completely get everybody to to not do anything. But there's some like clanging going on in the background. That's great, Carter. And I th one of the things I think is best about you that you add to the ticket is you are constantly that voice about sustainability and protecting people, not the people's health, but also the environment. And one of the places I noticed that that came up was literally a house party while Tiffany was talking about upgrading the hop, and you were very quick to be like, and electrify it, and
Mhm.
talk about the problems
Absolutely.
that you Hoboken uniquely experiences, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of I kind of backed into some of this stuff, quite honestly, Al. One of the first projects I did related to climate change was in 2002 and 2003 up on the Harlem River in New York City. And the designer I was working with was all about climate adaptation and educating us about sea level rise. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, oh, sea level rise. Oh my God, here we go. And now, moving a couple years later to 10 and a half feet above sea level here in Hoboken, I've seen it up close and personal. I've been driven towards a sustainability agenda partly out of personal survival because we started in our home on Garden Street with flooding basements and flooding back areas. And I realized, even though North Hudson Sewage Authority says, visit our website, ask us a question, visit our website to see your sewer rates. Everybody says visit our website, but if you actually go and actually look for the information, it's often not there. So that brought me into questioning, like, what what the H is going on with our sewer system. And this is probably 2007, 2008, 2009. And by then, in the boathouse community, Hoboken Cove Community Boathouse, we were having meetings with the Sewerage Authority because our vision is for a boathouse up on the cove between Hoboken and Weehawken. Huge expanse of water, natural place for recreation. Could be our big blue playground if we could just figure that place out. And I remember meeting with Fred Poche, who was then the executive director, and we were talking about green infrastructure and places for the stormwater to go and places for the water to go to keep it out of people's basements and places that could green the neighborhood and also create space for nature. And his answer was, oh, we tried that years ago when I was with New York City DEP. So we scratched at that surface a little bit. Well, Fred, when did you try it when you were DEP? He said, oh, around 1982, 1983. Fred,
So 40 years
that
ago.
was 25 years ago. The
Oh,
data has changed. There's been work on the Bronx River. There's been work on the Gowanus Canal, Newtown Creek, all over Philadelphia, Baltimore, Boston, Bridgeport. It's happening everywhere. We need to tap into the best practices from elsewhere and not just say, oh, we tried that years ago. My feeling is, in terms of sustainability and environmentalism and fixing our infrastructure and keeping water out of our basements, the solutions are out there, but the politicians don't give it enough attention. It's too complicated for many politicians to understand. In my work as an advocate and working for the Netherlands consulate in New York City the past 11 years, in my work as a professional, interacting with politicians at all level, local, state, federal, probably 300 to 400 public officials, from mayors to senators to congresspersons to state legislators and others. Of those 300 to 400 people, I would say less than 1% have any experience on the built environment. They're not contractors, they're not plumbers, they're not electricians, they're not engineers, they're not architects, they're not landscape architects. They're funders to
man.
campaigns because that's the way the system is set up. That's what we reward, or that's who gets rewarded by the people that we elect. So I saw this opportunity in Boston 7, 8 years ago with a state assemblyman who was actually an architect. And we set up an exchange between the Netherlands and Boston to kind of share best practices, what to do about sea level rise, what to do about climate change. And this legislator, who was a built environment professional, licensed architect, he was a great door opener, and he could actually figure out the problems and get the right people around the table. And that's the kind of leadership that we need. We have sometimes animosity between state, local, federal officials, or sometimes it's too cozy. But even to use an example of last week there was a public safety forum, and we had Office of Emergency Management, we had the fire department, police department, health department, the constellation of municipal agencies concerned with public safety. Half of the comments, most of the frustration was about traffic and mobility and the paralysis of people trying to get in and out of town. But who wasn't there? Veolia was not there. North Hudson Sewage Authority, we're not there. So we had this great public forum, everybody upset about traffic and circulation and congestion. But the two major players who are scheduling all this work and doing all this work to their credit, because we need them, they're not even in the room. So we have this pattern in Hoboken. We can't seem to get the right people around the table. And that's what makes me excited about a Tiffany Fisher for mayor.
Absolutely, because she gives a couple of anecdotes about her doing expressly that, right? Where it's like some contractor or something wanted to build something, and she's like, they were going to close off the road for 3 months, and she's like, why are we doing that? Why are we giving the developer everything they want, not thinking about the people here? Yeah,
Short-term
and
pain or short-term gain, long-term pain, or short-term pain, long-term gain. We kind of get it
one of
backwards.
those.
And I think as you're alluding to, most people in government don't actually know how to build anything.
Yeah,
And that's not a fault because we got the physical world, but we've also got the social world. I think sometimes in government we got people who are really good at the physical but really bad at the social. I
mm,
lived in New York City under the Juliana era in the 90s. He was very socially focused. He was so hyper focused on people and behavior. He was terrible at the physical stuff. I mean, after the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, he goes and puts the Office of Emergency Management up on the 46th floor across the street from the World Trade Center. In that building, they had a 40,000-gallon diesel storage tank. You wonder why that whole thing burned and all those people died? Because we didn't learn from what happened in 1993. So we need leadership that can learn from the past, not just ignore it and expect that they're intellectually capable or their people are capable
right.
to do it right or do it better. And what worries me about others in the race is that one thing I've learned from an old mentor at the NYU Wagner School of Public Administration, where I went a long time ago, was fortunate to get my master's degree in '98. He said, Carter, don't just think about the people you elect, worry about the people they bring with them. And
So
that
true.
is so true. Anyway,
So true.
I'm confident in my exchanges with Tiffany and her interactions with others along the way and the way she speaks with and to all of us, she will put the best team together. It's not hiring her friends. She'll find the best people for the job, whether they're here, whether they're not here, and she'll get us all working together.
Absolutely. And I think, you alluded to something else, I think, in there, which is this it's not only a social thing, but you get these politicians and their buddies who are just chasing headlines, right? And I think that's been part of the problem here in Hoboken for a little bit.
It's a
Uh,
cultural problem. When I was doing waterfront advocacy with the Waterfront Alliance, we had a situation across the Hudson River where a park had a leaky sewer pipe, and the sewer pipe was draining right in the Hudson River. This is probably 12, 13 years ago. In that case, it wasn't the people who run the park that were the problem. It was another advocacy group who said, we're not ready to release that yet. We're not ready to jump on that. So let's not tell anybody about it until we're ready. We have a culture
uh,
of people in the nonprofit sector, in the public sector, in the business sector, or aspiring political sector. They've got a master plan for influence or power or decision making or discretion or whatever. But you know what? We're not going to fix problems that way. We have so many challenges in the built environment. There's no need to wait 2 or 3 months to get a team together. We know a lot of what the problems are. We just need to get to work. Maybe every
yeah.
politician needs to go on like a social media diet. Maybe every politician needs to, with all due respect, cut in half their communication staff. When you're spending time communicating and stirring up and mixing up these bowls of word salad that sound great to people, you're not
Yeah.
governing, you're not deciding, you're not facilitating like a better future for the residents of today and our kids who we want to be able to afford to stay here.
Speaking of that, and this is a good transition because normally what we do with these things with breakfast tips is we ask some questions, right, that come from the community, and the questions that we are often getting at these like house parties or via email or in our exchanges uh, do tend to be it's all local stuff, deep, hyper local stuff. It's not these like big national issues or anything people are concerned about. For instance, we got a good question on affordability the other day. Like, how are we supposed to make Hoboken, famously like in the shadow of New York City, suffering from a lot of like soaring rent prices and everything. How are we supposed to make Hoboken affordable? So what do you think, Carter?
Well, I think we need to protect and support local property owners. What's happened in the real estate market in Hoboken, in the metro area, around the US, is out of town property owners, out of town investors have bought up real estate, not because they're good at property management, not because they care about giving people a place to live, but more for the money that can be extracted. So I think we need to set some goals for maintaining local ownership. We need to facilitate local ownership. You know, when the same problems were happening in New York City 50 years ago after World War II, the cooperative housing model came out. Maybe they're local property
Right?
owners who are ready to move on. They don't want to be landlords forever, and there's a lot of them. But you know, they want to be able to pass on the asset or the money from the asset to their kids. Maybe we need a local ownership model. Maybe we need a housing preservation trust fund that local owners and small property owners can buy into or sell to, and individual tenants or renters can buy into at an affordable price, not just the market price. Our whole economy is so skewed right now. It has nothing to do with supply and demand. Our whole economy, from the price of milk to the price of eggs to the price of fuel to the cost of housing, it is what are people willing to pay? And that is how the market makers are setting
That's
their
true.
prices. It has nothing to, there's so few providers, so few suppliers now. This whole thing that I learned in economics of perfect competition, it doesn't exist. We're in an oligarchy of food distributors and growers, of housing market providers, of people who control retail. And now the same is happening to our healthcare system as private equity has come in, figured out how to milk all these facilities for Medicare, set up different corporate entities so they can make money off shuttling somebody from Hoboken Hospital up to Bayonne for dialysis, excuse me, up to Christ for dialysis, down to Bayonne for imaging, shuttle them back to Hoboken for the room. They have been making money with every one of those transactions, not including the management fee, not including the janitorial services company that they've set up. And now they're selling to a real estate group. So we're at risk of losing our hospital if we don't actively advocate to the state that they need to protect this asset. Because if we don't, it's just going to be another giant development site in town, and the quality of healthcare in Hoboken will drop.
Exactly. Like what's happening in the hospital is criminal. It sounds like a
It's so
mess. And
it's so typical. You're exactly right. But you know, speaking of that, what we're missing in this town is big picture leadership because you can't ignore the fact that the hospital, the whole block, is right across the street from a big municipal garage, which is three-quarters of a block. But most of the politicians that I talk to, they think like, oh, that's a separate thing. Oh, that's different than the hospital. No, 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 no. You need to get in a hot air balloon or go up on Google Earth and you'll see right across the street from each other, for better or for worse, these two things are inextricably linked. So if we're going to get a new hospital, maybe it would go at the garage site. If we're going to get a new garage, maybe it would go at the hospital site. It's sort of like a chessboard where these pieces need to be assembled and disassembled together. We can't continue this transactional development of the whole town, or we will lose our essential services. Prices will continue to go up, and we'll force people out, which is the exact opposite of what we really want to have in terms of a diverse, affordable, sustainable, healthy community. We got to cut it out with the transactional real estate deals, especially these ones of the last 8 years, especially the one emblematic in Garage B. Garage B is for
it's another
boondoggle.
ball of
And
wax.
everybody needs to get in the way of that because it's just another example of a politician with one foot out the door looking to their next campaign or their next wave of campaign donors and using our infrastructure and city owned assets to enrich themselves and their future political ambitions. It has got to stop.
100%. And that brings us back to the
Mm.
beginning, which is one of the things Hoboken is missing is that big picture thinking and big picture planning that just hasn't been done for the last bit. And we're starting to see the consequences of it. And we'll continue to feel them if we don't choose the right leadership now. And
It's a
I gotta
Hoboken
say,
problem. It's a New Jersey problem. It's a national problem. You know, we're all
yeah,
chasing ratables. because we want more money, and politicians, we want more money to spend, but we're not necessarily chasing efficiency. We're not looking at new ways of doing things. I mean, what was it like 15 years ago? We finally got rid of the horse mounted police unit. You know, you
Yeah.
wonder like, why are we not electrifying our buses? You know, if you look at Hoboken as a physical thing, we're a little sliver of the floodplain between the Palisades Cliffs and the Hudson River. And if you live by the river, you've got these beautiful views. You've got the calm that the river and the views, creates. Good for your psychological health. But if you live on the west side of town, along Jackson, along Harrison, you don't get that river breeze. You're at the foot of the Palisades and everything that comes down with it, from noise to people to the infrastructure, et cetera. The air quality in the west side of town is way worse than the air quality in the east side of town and along the Hudson River. And if the census.gov site were working right now, but we have a dysfunctional federal government, so the census data
Yeah.
is not actually accessible online. If the
Yep.
census.gov site were working, it would show you, it has shown me that you will live longer on the east side of town, Hudson Street, Bloomfield Street, Washington Street. The lifespan of the average Hobokenite is longer on the east side, and on the west side, it is significantly shorter. And I think the air quality has a lot to do with it. We should have been electrifying these buses 10, 20 years ago. Now we're getting $300+ million in a new train station and the Elcor development and a big plaza. Over in New York City, at the other end of the 126 line, we're going to get an $8 billion bus station. Is anybody talking about electrifying any of this stuff? We should have the cleanest bus line in the country. Hoboken Terminal to the Port Authority Bus Terminal. Port Authority Bus Terminal, back to Hoboken Terminal. You can plug in on either side. It's pretty flat. Doesn't take much electrical energy to get that bus going and keep it moving.
And that's absolutely right, Carter. And unfortunately, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty there. That's why Carter got cut off a little bit. And unfortunately, he had to go continue campaigning. So that's going to be the end of the Breakfast with Tiffany's today. Apologies for the technical difficulties, but my thanks to Carter Kraft, who was able to make it time for us to do a little bit of an interview so that we could get it up on the Breakfast at Tiffany's. Tiffany is out there still. You'll probably see her around. She's making a mad dash all over the district. It's amazing how much she's able to do in the course of a day. But that's going to cut it for today's episode of Breakfast at Tiffany's. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Bye.